everybody, and welcome back to Blue Jays Today, where today, everybody, we've got to talk about spring training and all the exciting things happening there with the Toronto Blue Jays. And then on the flip side of things, you see it in the title and the thumbnail, the not-so-exciting things happening with the Toronto Blue Jays. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. made some comments over the past weekend about his free agency, and it's quite startling, to say the least. I mean, if I'm a Blue Jay fan, I am a Blue Jay fan, not if. I am a Blue Jay fan, and I read that comment, and I was a little bit taken back based on everything he's been saying leading up to it. We're going to get into what exactly he said and more. Before we do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Blue Jays Today. Also, we've got a special guest coming in from Jays Digest a little bit later, so stay tuned for that. But first things first, everybody, let's get into these comments that we have from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Now, everybody knows, we all know Vladdy in the past, all the famous quotes of him saying like, yeah, I will never play for the Yankees. Yeah, I like to kill the Yankees. All that kind of stuff. You remember that? And we were all thinking, oh, yeah, heck yeah, Vladdy. Like, that's our guy. You know, remember the whole My House thing? This guy was all against the New York Yankees. I mean, hell, I'll even remind you right here. So this is a Bleacher Report article right now, taking a snippet from Jon Heyman's article from the New York Post. So he goes on, and remember, there it is. I like to kill the Yankees. I would never sign with the Yankees, not even when I'm dead. Okay, that's a big statement. But then, like I just alluded to, in Jon Heyman's recent New York Post article, he goes on and talks about how he wouldn't rule out the Yankees in free agency, despite his father's dispute in the past. Now, if you're familiar with the whole thing with his father's dispute, it's the whole thing about him and them initially signing Gary Sheffield over Vlad Guerrero Sr., et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, we can kind of allude into the whole thing of like, oh, well, he never played for the Yankees, blah, blah, blah. Well, apparently, here's the quote from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. If I go to free agency, every team, all 30 teams, are going to have the opportunity to sit down with me, to talk to me, okay? And he also said this, I'm okay with everything. It's in the past, alluding to the whole thing with his father. And I'm also assuming there's some mention of him talking about how he likes to kill the New York Yankees. So, yeah, that's what he said. And it's very, very, very startling to me. Here's why. First of all, I'm not upset that he's open to talking about 30 teams. He literally said that when he was talking to when he was talking to the media this past Tuesday, when he decided to inevitably not sign an extension with the Vladimir Guerrero, or to sign the extension with the Toronto Blue Jays, excuse me. I'm not upset that he's talking about he can go and speak with all 30 teams. That's your absolute right. It's just, for me, when in that same media presser on Tuesday, when you're talking about not being this free agency, being a distraction for you, for the team, for the fans this season, and then you go just moments later and you have a whole article talking about how you're okay and you're open to signing with literally your current team's arch nemesis. It's starting, I know Vladdy's a smart guy, okay? But doing stuff like that is going completely against what you're talking about, which is not trying to, bring up his free agency and let it be in a distraction during the season. So that's where it kind of rubs me the wrong way. I want to hear what you guys have to say in the chat. Eric, Toronto, Jared, Daniela, everybody in here talking about it right now. It is a little bit shocking, to say the least. And now I know there's always going to be posts. There's always going to be, people talking about Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s free agency market. They're going to be talking about him getting traded. But it's up to Vladdy to control what he can control. And going and doing that's part of his control. Another thing, too, and again, I know Vladdy's a smart guy, and I don't know if he knows what he's doing when he does this, when he signs posts, or when he likes posts, on Instagram of him wearing a Yankees uniform or him wearing a Boston Red Sox uniform. Again, that's distracting. That's going to start making people feel rubbed the wrong way. And I've already seen it in the comments. Everyone loves, literally before the extension deadline, everyone was on board. 90% I'd probably say we're on board with extend Vladdy. Maybe the 10% were saying trade him, get rid of him, whatever. But now I'm starting to see a shift, in that percentage, in that ratio, because of these little things. Now I'll say this right here. I, of course, want Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to be a Toronto Blue Jay for the rest of his career. I want that. I never not want that. He's a phenomenal player, and he would help this franchise stay competitive. But it's just very concerning when you're hearing him doing all these things and kind of going back and said, I don't know, maybe I'm talking out of my ass, but that's why I'm going to have Nick come in here, give me his 2 cents in just a little bit. But before we do, everybody, I do want to give a quick shout out to not a new sponsor, a returning sponsor here on Blue Jays Today. Big shout out, everybody, to Tim Hortons. Blue Jays Today, presented by Tim Hortons. You've got a great opportunity to win some stuff here, everybody, because Roll Up to Win is back, everybody. Canada, your favorite contest is back. Roll Up to Win is back at Tim Hortons, and that means you could win millions of amazing prizes with just the swipe of a thumb. Imagine turning your routine Tim's run into an unforgettable vacation with sell-off vacations, or a $1,000 Rakuten cash prize, or an all-new, all-electric 2025 Volkswagen ID Buzz. Even with the simple joy of winning a free coffee or a donut can make anyone's day. I mean, realistically, that's what I'm here for. I'm here for free coffees and donuts. But you only have up until March 23rd. So open up the Tim's app and get rolling. This is our game, Canada. So don't let the chance of millions of amazing prizes pass you by. Play Roll Up to Win on the Tim's app now. Rules apply. Canada only. No purchase necessary. Visit the Tim apps for details. So with that being said, everybody, let's get our guest in, everybody. Everybody, please welcome Nick from Jays Digest. Welcome in, Nick. How you doing today, my man, on this beautiful Monday?
Doing fantastic. Baseball is starting soon. The regular season, we have spring training. Games canceled today, though, unfortunately. But thanks for having me, Adam. And I'm excited to talk, baseball, but also the Vladdy stuff, which is a little bit unfortunate.
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about all. I was gonna bring up the game to actually, like, later on. We have a Betway segment. I was like, oh, let's pick the lines. I'll be dope.
I know.
No, can't do that. That's locked now. So I'm thinking about Vladdy later. So that's just gonna be more salt in the wound. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about the whole Vladdy situation. I gave my kind of 2 cents. I kind of feel a little bit slighted. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass a little bit. Maybe give your 2 cents. Like, it feels weird when he says, like, I don't want this to be a distraction, but then he goes on and creates a little bit of distraction, whether he meant to or not. Let me know your thoughts.
Yeah, I think there's definitely it's weird because for a while, and I still think the general consensus is that Ross Atkins has done a pretty bad job, and it's his fault about not extending him. It seems from what we're hearing that when it comes to the deadline, last week, that Vladdy asked for a ridiculous number, whether that was $580 million, whatever. David Ortiz came out and threw out a number. Yeah. So leading that, and then going into the fact that he made these comments and I guess spoke through his translator to the New York Post. I don't know why he's doing that. And I said that in one of my videos. It's just confusing. I don't know exactly. Really, he's either doing it to gain leverage with the Jays or try to get the Jays to up their offer before, the season starts. I still think that is a possibility, even though I do think he's going to hit free agency. It is very weird, and I'm not exactly sure why he is doing that. And it's definitely a bit of a slight to the fan base. He's not going to gain any kudos from the fan base by doing that, even though he's hopefully going to have a fantastic season out there. It's weird. Every time he gets a hit, it's like excitement followed by dread a little bit.
I know. And that's the thing. Yeah. Like, the only thing and people do bring this up, and you brought it up right there, where it's like, oh, is he gaining some sort of leverage over the Jays by flirting with the Yankees? I mean, yes and no. Call him A, call him B. Like, if you say stuff like that, obviously, maybe it creates like, oh, we got to really sign him back. But if they would have signed him back, they would have done it already. And I actually like what you brought up there, the whole Ross Atkins fumbling the bag. Because, yeah, it came out earlier. Now this is just kind of a speculation where, Ortiz brings up, well, how much he thinks Vladdy's worth. And obviously Ortiz is very connected to the Dominican players in today's game. But if the offer from, or I guess Vladdy's wanting offer from the Jays was up there of 550, close to 600 million, do you think that Ross Atkins still made a mistake by letting him go and prove it this year and then go to free agency to set his price?
Yeah, I think the mistake was probably made years ago, like after even 2021, maybe 2022. That being said, like, I think people forget that Vladdy has had a mix of, 2 great seasons last year, 2021, and then the rest of them were, he's been an average player because obviously he plays first base. So I think there was opportunity to extend him before when Tatis and all those things, but that's obviously hindsight. If he was asking anything near $550 million, I don't really blame the front office. Like, I do think they, any number to get it done, but I think 550 to 600 million is, it's a bit ridiculous. And for a first baseman, I do think Vladdy needs to stay in Toronto, and especially as it sells some jerseys, Rogers and all those things, new stadium. I don't know how you'd be able to justify, let's say 550 for the sake of argument. That would be a ridiculous amount of money. And I'm not saying they can get someone better in free agency if they let him walk for that number. But I think if you're Ross Atkins, the front office probably just said, if he's asking for that amount, we're better off waiting and seeing both how he does this year, because I mean, if he has a down season this year, which hopefully is not the case, because obviously the Jays, everyone benefits if he does well. I mean, if he has like an 800 OPS, his number is going to, fall a little bit, even though the numbers in general across baseball is going up. So I don't think it was a mistake. No, if it's 550, I do think it's a mistake letting it get to this point, however, because we're at the point now where Bo Bichette and Vladdy are both pending free agents here after this year. And it makes, I mean, they messed up in a lot of ways. I'm not sure about if it is 550. Now, if it's something like 500, 490, I think they could have extended a little bit. But I don't, from what we're hearing and from what I believe, I don't think it was near that. I think it was in the upper 500s.
Yeah, because what I'm assuming is that he's betting on himself. He's doing the same thing that Juan Soto did, and if he bets on himself and he hits, it's going to be big. I want to take a look at his numbers just to like kind of get the train of thought of what Ross and maybe the front office may have been thinking before we do. Big shout out here to Mauricio Perez saying happy to see the Jays Digest collaboration. So there you go. Shout out to you, Mauricio, and thank you for the super chat dono. Yeah, I wanted to bring up because you brought up a good point. Like, what if he does have like a regressing year this year, or and goes back to that 788 or 818, somewhere in between there, which he had in 2022 and 2023. I mean, that guy's not, at least going into free agency, not worth $550 million, right? So if I'm Ross Atkins, like, what am I paying $550 million for? Or plus, I'm paying for the year he just did, probably, or the year in 2021. That's going to definitely be a lot of money for the year that, or the age that he's coming into it. But, that happened 2 out of 6 seasons he played, right? Now, obviously he's a more experienced big leaguer, and the likelihood of having a better year is probably more likely nowadays. But you could get a really better offer, and probably he might be more likely to come back to you and make some sort of, if he does have a bad year, bad for Vladdy's standpoint, average MLB player, he might be more likely to come back to you knowing he's comfortable with the city of Toronto, and that there might be some opt-outs included. Maybe he loads up in the front half and then there's an opt-out halfway. There was kind of flirtation of that idea. So if I am a betting man, half the time I think his value goes up just looking at these numbers, and half the time it goes down. So I listen, I am a huge Ross Atkins non-supporter, but I can kind of see where he's coming from in all this.
Yeah, I'm also not a Ross Atkins supporter. Probably a little bit more than you in some way. But I don't really I think he's done a horrible job. I still think he should probably be fired. But That being said, yeah, the numbers there were intriguing. And let's not forget, he's only 25 years old. Going to be turning 26. I mean, the trajectory should be going up. He should continue to sustain 900 plus OPSs. That should be the standard going forward. And even if that is the case, let's say he finishes next season with a generous 920 OPS, something like that. Is that worth $550 million? Maybe. And then probably depending on how the salaries are going, Juan Soto getting 700, whatever, the first baseman thing hurts him a lot. I think when it comes to the front office, and we know they like to use their numbers to evaluate contracts, whether that be Santander, they got him at a very good deal. And that's part of that's only because another team came in late in the bidding and then offered Santander a better contract, but he had signed with the Jays. It's interesting. 550 is just a bit too much for right now. And I don't know if he's going to get $600 million in, the free agent market next season. I'm assuming even if he has a good year this year, maybe, but yeah. And if he does, then I think the Jays will be willing to pay up. And I think their, mindset's probably, okay, if he has a great year, we now have 3 years of fantastic production. We can justify to Ed Rogers or whoever it is that extra $100 million, and whatever extra amount he earns. Let's say he was offered $550 million. That's what Vladdy said the Jays would take. Then, and then he has a great year and ends up being 600. I think the Jays can probably stomach that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you do bring up a good point with the first baseman thing. And I know other Nick, my co-host here on Blue Jays Today, brings this up different because the ages, of course. But he brings up Pete Alonso and how nobody was willing to offer this guy anything other than his own home team, the Mets. However, I do think about this too, and I want to pick your brain too. Everyone talks about the first base thing and how people don't value that kind of player. Now, Juan Soto, during his whole, extension talks, now I'm looking at Juan Soto's Baseball Savant, and holy crap, it's obviously phenomenal. He's one of the greatest players ever. It's awesome. But he's also not known as a above average defender. In fact, he's actually below average to mid to below average, right? And eventually there was talks that they're going to have Juan Soto transition to be a DH one day. So now he's not actually providing you any sort of defensive value in that regard. So with that being said, I look at Vladdy a lot, and I'm like, okay, well, right now he's not a great first baseman. Maybe that hinders the WAR a little bit, so you can make an argument there. But similar too, it's like you're buying Vladdy for the bat and the age and him being in his prime. So for me, like if teams, and I know that they've devalued Pete Alonso, but if teams devalue that from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. just because he plays first base, I think you got to take a look at a good case example at like Juan Soto. Like you're paying 15 years, 10 of those 15 years will probably be a DH. So
Yeah.
what you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Am I talking crazy right here, or are you kind of with me on this?
It definitely makes some sense. And obviously, I mean, funny enough, he is not a very good defender at all, even though, Gold Glove finalist somehow, because that award means, nothing
Means
anymore.
nothing.
I mean, Vladdy won a Gold Glove when he had an okay year as a first baseman, but it's interesting. Now, I think, I still think even it's weird because in the outfield, he's just automatically going to be viewed as more valuable in the field, even if he's like a slightly below average, because first base, as the advanced metrics, and we know, they use WAR calculators internally, we all these things. It is an interesting point. Now, I do think that Juan Soto is a better hitter than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I think he's 100%. A better baseball player than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And I also think that if you're a front office and you're looking at it from the sense of, okay, who would you rather give 15 years to? It's going to be Juan Soto every time. He's also been a lot more reliable. Like he had one iffy year with the Padres there and got traded. I think Juan Soto, even though you're right, he's not a very good defender, has a pretty bad arm. I still think he can be a league average defender pretty easily. And that is way more valuable than being even an elite, above average first baseman. So I think that's kind of where it comes from. It is a very interesting point, though, because he's not a very good defender. But I think his on-base percentage, his years, I mean, like you mentioned, we've been talking about, Vladdy's had 3 years now with a below 800 OPS. Juan Soto's had multiple years with above 1,000 OPS, and he is one of the best. He has one of the best eyes in baseball. So I think it's just safer to go for Juan Soto. I do think it's an interesting comparable. Regarding Pete Alonso, I don't like to use that comparison. I think he's just Pete Alonso's a lot older.
I tend to agree. Yeah.
And like we know who Pete Alonso is. Pete Alonso's never going to be a guy. I don't think anymore is going to hit 1,000 OPS. I mean, if you're a team now trying to offer Pete Alonso money, like the Mets did and the Blue Jays did as well, I mean, you offer him a 3-year contract by age 35. He's probably going to be, a heavily declining asset. And I think age was the primary factor. And he had a horrible year last year as well, whereas Vladdy had a great year. So I'm not with you, or I'm not with, I guess, Nick on that one as much. When it comes to Soto, it's interesting. I think Soto is just a bit of a better, at least a better hitter right now and has been in the past. Though I do think they're very close. And I think Vladdy has a ceiling to be just as good, if not a little bit of a, about on the same level as, Juan Soto when it comes to the bat, but just a bit more like it's easier to train a guy to be an average outfielder than it is, anything else. And I think if you get to an average outfielder, he'll be worth, that's never like extra 1 to 2 WAR compared to Vladdy's, where you'll see him have like 2 WAR seasons if he doesn't play, he doesn't hit the bat well.
No, and I'm with you. I'm with you on that, right? I was also just looking at like Freddie Freeman, because whenever I think about like premier first baseman, defenseman, I'm like, there aren't too many out there. I was like, maybe Freddie Freeman. And Freddie Freeman, honestly, that's above average. It's average, or, his fielding run value is about average according to Baseball Savant. So it's an interesting thought experiment. But regardless, I think we're both kind of on the same page that if he wanted 550, 600 right now, that's a lot. And I think honestly, the best thing for him to do and for the Jays is to let him play it out. See what he does this year. If he does regress a little bit, you can maybe get a little bit of a deal. But if he has an explosive year, now I've been throwing this out to everybody who's come on the show. If Vladdy has a great year this year, either equal or better than what he did last year, is it going to be harder or easier for the Jays to get him back?
It's a very good question. A lot of factors. So let's say, give me an OPS number that you like, an OPS that he has, so I can have some sort of baseline here.
I'll give you, because last year he had a 940, and his best year he had over 1,000. I'll give you, he has a 965.
Okay.
OPS. Same, and high batting average, high on base, right around those like MVP.
Do the Jays win any series? I'm adding some.
Okay. Yeah, the Jays are the wild card, and we lose, but we win 1 game.
And the wild card again? Okay.
Yep. We lose in game 3.
Is it going to be easier or harder for them? I think it would be like, the thing is that Vladdy says he wants to be in Toronto, and I am not fully convinced about that anymore. Like, I do think that I think if all things being equal, and there's an offer from the Mets, the Red Sox, the Yankees, whoever it is, and the Jays at the same number, he will pick Toronto. However, That being said, it would be very I mean, if they lose in the wild card again, I don't know if the Jays are going to be willing to, fork out $700 million for Vladdy. I think it's probably going to be harder for them to sign Vladdy if he has a fantastic year, but it would be easier for the front office to justify paying him. But that doesn't directly translate to, because in the competition, right? 29 other teams. I think their easiest time to extend him realistically was a week ago as it pertains to, no other competition. But it doesn't really make sense. And I've been on record saying this. I don't think Vladdy wanted to sign an extension with the Blue Jays this offseason. I didn't think there was a world he was going to do it. I think Joe Siddle was on your guys' show and said
he
similar thing.
That.
Yeah, he gave the Jays a number that was, hey, this is a ridiculous number. You would be overpaying for me, but this is the only way you can basically buy out my free agency attempt because you only get it. He's like one of few players who is one of the best. I mean, Ohtani we saw it, and Soto, one of the best players in baseball, going to the open market at mid-20s, right? He didn't want to do that. It makes no sense for him to do that. So I don't think he actually gave the Jays a fair chance. Now, the optics, he's trying to, stay in love with the fan base a little bit there. But I think overall it would be more difficult, especially if they're losing playoff series, because then the front office and Bo Bichette's going to be walking as well. You have to think about that.
Yeah.
I think harder. I think the overall answer would be harder, though it would be easier for them to justify paying him. I don't know if they get it done, though, if they don't have him. I think Keegan Matheson, he was on my show the other day, and I asked him, do you think that Bo Bichette and Vladdy, which one do you think stays and goes? And he predicted both leave.
Yeah, I'm honestly kind of with you. If I had to bet my life, both go. I haven't seen the Jays be willing to meet his demands. And then, again, if he has a big year, maybe maybe they didn't meet it this offseason because they are waiting to see him do it again. But, do I have faith that Ross Atkins is going to do it? And also Mark Shapiro's. This is also a wrinkle to the whole thing. Mark Shapiro's contract's up at the end of this year. How is that going to play into a factor? That's going to be another bridge we cross, another conversation. But
one thing I want to note as well, I'm gonna sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I think if they make it deep in the playoffs this year, so let's say they make it even ALDS, but let's say they lose in the ALCS, I think at that point I could see a real world where they actually go out and bring both of them back. If they see some sort of success there, it's easy for them to justify not bringing either of them back if they lose again in the wild card, whatever it is. But if they somehow make a push this year, maybe not both, I could see a world where they, bring Vladdy back then if they see some success, finally things start to come together, which I think is a real possibility. I mean, some people call me delusional for that. I think there's a chance this is a good year for the Jays. I know we'll probably dive into that a little bit, but we have Bo Bichette, you have Vladimir Guerrero Jr., both in contract years. Players tend to perform better. And I think that may have been also part of the reason that Ross Atkins in front office are okay, you know what? We're not going to extend you right now. Go have a fantastic year for us in your contract year, because the pressure's on him now. If he has a bad year, it hurts him immensely. And if he has a good year, the Jays are clearly trying to win. They signed Jeff Hoffman to 3 years. They traded for Andres Jimenez, is probably going to replace Bo at short. So I think that the Jays actually have a good chance this year. I know it's rough because beyond that, it's very murky. But when it comes to this baseball season, you look at the Fangraphs projections, I think the Jays are projected at 83 wins, 82 wins, and the Yankees number one are at 87 wins. And we know that's one series switch. Whether it's an injury, whether it's the Jays being hot, could change the entire outlook of it. So the Yankees got worse. I still stand by that. And I think the Jays got honestly significantly better here, even though in the future it's not looking too bright.
I agree. I mean, the parts in, I actually just broke this down on Bad for Baseball. I'm going to be posting that in just a little bit, everybody. But I broke down the Jays on Bad for Baseball. It was their turn for the whole profile and projections. And the parts in, we're so connected to it. We kind of forget the whole picture. We're like, holy crap, the parts in definitely are greater than the parts out. Now, with that being said, let's transition a little bit, because we're talking, look, they got to win. At the end of the day, all this talk, and I always get to this point around spring training where I'm so tired. No offense to either of us, is our jobs, but it's I'm so tired of talking about spring or free agency and contracts and blah, blah, blah. I just want to watch some effing baseball and watch some good baseball. And we got a little bit about that, this weekend. The Blue Jays in 2025 are 2-0. Big comeback win yesterday against the Boston Red Sox. You had who was it? Paulino and Coffee coming up clutch against their old team. Gotta love it. But that's not who we're talking about right here. I wanted to bring up, because I know you also talked about it on Jay's Digest, but I wanted to bring up Alan Rodin and Arelis Martinez. They had some very good showings, 3 at-bats, 4 at-bats for the two kids. I got their stats right there. They had some very good showings in the last two games. They played both games. Allen came in the back half of the first game, and then they both came in and played in the second game. Allen Roden, he hits 2 doubles, walk, RBI. He made a great diving catch out there yesterday in left field. Martinez, a home run. We saw that in game 1. He's 2 for 4 with also another extra base hit, a double, RBI, and 2 runs scored. My question to you, obviously this is great in the very small sample size that this is a game's worth of at-bats right here. But is it too early to be hopping on the bandwagon of Roden or Martinez, or is this too early to be hyped up? Why or why not? Like, give me your thoughts here, Nick.
Yeah, I think that I don't think it's too early. I mean, when it comes to Allen Roden, I don't think he starts the season with the big league club. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Buck Martinez said that as well in the first game of the broadcast. Orelvis Martinez is interesting. Obviously, Allen Roden is a very interesting prospect. Like, I don't think he's ever going to have 1,000 OPS and 900 OPS, anything like that. Buck Martinez compared him to Kyle Schwarber, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
No.
Allen Roden doesn't hit for power. Their swings look slightly similar. They both hit from the left side. But as it pertains to Allen Roden, I think he's going to be a guy who could even lead off in a lineup. He gets on base pretty well. It gets, doesn't have a ton of power. He will be a factor at some point this season. I don't think it's going to be at the start with, Will Wagner, Davis Schneider. I mean, even Ernie Clement is probably going to start third. Speaking of starting at third, Orelvis Martinez, I think that there is a world where he could. And when you're talking about this Blue Jays lineup, they didn't get that one extra bat that we were hoping for, whether that be Pete Alonso, Alex Bregman. I think if you're looking for ceiling, Orelvis Martinez is that guy. If you want to, his defense is horrible, but if you want to have him in as a DH against left-handed pitchers, even throw him out there a little bit against righties, I don't hate it. The problem arises is that you have Vladdy, who you're going to play some DH. You have Anthony Santander, who also is going to factor into DH. You have Alejandro Kirk a little bit as well. And if they're trying to get Will Wagner reps, David Schneider reps, the DH spot might be a little bit clogged. But, I mean, he had a double yesterday. He had also a walk against Garrett Crochet. And, like you mentioned, the home run. I think Orelvis Martinez is the higher upside play to all these guys. And somebody who could actually come in, hit 30 home runs if given a full season. And obviously he got, his PEDs last year kind of derailed his season a little bit. He looks really good. He looks more patient. His biggest issue was on base percentage of strikeouts. And in the very small sample size, he started to, he looks really good, really good. So I think he is the one to look out for as it pertains to actually making an impact in the first 30 games. Allen Roden, long-term wise, maybe a Spencer Horwitz trajectory comes up, plays really well. And then honestly, I could see them trading him for a bigger player or something, depending on how the Jays are doing at the deadline.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you on Allen Roden. Like right now, the log jam that we have, I'm going to bring up the base Fangraphs right here. I love Fangraphs, like roster projections. I love that. I'm with you. I'm with you on the Allen Roden because I'm looking right now. In a healthy lineup, you would have Dalton Varsho in center. You got Santander in left, or you have George in left. You got Santander and George in the corners. Maybe you get one of them DHing, and then you have a fourth outfielder available on the roster. But who is that going to be to start the year? It's probably they're going to see what Joey Loperfito's got. Yep. They like him. They traded it for him for a reason. I can see Joey Loperfito in there. If Davis Schneider starts with the team, you slot him in there in left field like we saw last year. You can get him some playing time. Miles Straw, we'll see if that's even a factor on the team right now. Lucas, like there's a lot of log jams for guys that are like kind of primed to start the year that you're not so worried that if it doesn't work out, like you're not butthurt if you have to set them down or cut them. Right? Like these are the guys that you're okay with doing that. Whereas in your, later on, if that does happen, let's be realistic, injuries are going to happen. Underperformances, like I just mentioned, are going to happen. And then you have Allen Roden come up and play. And he's probably best suited to come up later so he can get that regular playing time down in AAA. Come on up, be ready and prime, just like Spencer Horwitz was last year, and play good. And you're right, his stuff plays really great at the top of the lineup. They have George Springer right here, right now at the top of the lineup. That ain't going to be what it is. Let's be realistic. He's not going to be starting up there to begin the year. That's an easy slot in because he's got ability to get on base, hit for a high average, and maybe swipe a couple bags or two. Now, Orelvis Martinez, to kind of answer, I guess, my own question I proposed to you, is the hype too early? I don't think so because we've been waiting for him for such a long time now. You know what I mean? Like, it's been years after years. How many spring trainings have you seen Orelvis Martinez hit a home run and you're like, that boy looked nice? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is like the third or fourth spring training now, and it's time. Yes, he came up last year, and we could have saw a little bit, but then you mentioned it, the PED thing kind of, derailed it. Hopefully his girlfriend's pregnant and they have a baby on the way. I'm not sure about that. Shout out to them. But if Orelvis Martinez is good to go now, that you're right. This is the guy with the highest upside. And we're in a season right now where we got to have players that are ready to play right now. And we have to play the guys who are hitting well. There's no more, let's wait and let's develop and let's see. We got right now, it's the last dance, right? We got 1 year potentially of Vlad left, 1 year of Bo Bichette left, 1 year of, some of the bullpen guys and starting pitching. But if it's just 1 year left and Aurelvis Martinez looks like he could bang right off the bat, pun intended, then go ahead. Then put him in, right? What are we waiting for? And I agree with you. I think third base and DH, like that profile is really nice to begin the year, because who else is the other third baseman? Addison Barger right now has a little bit of wrist injury and also didn't really perform super well last year. That guy could see starting in AAA to begin the year. So, okay, you have Aurelvis Martinez play a little bit of third base. What about second base? Who could play second base? David Schneider, maybe, but Aurelvis Martinez, he could easily jump into that right spot behind Andres Jimenez. Okay, and then DH, he could be that guy right there as well, right? If the outfield is full with Varsho, Santander, and Springer, he can go DH. So there's a way for him to actually get everyday reps, or at least 80%, 75% reps if they really wanted to. And I think out of camp, do you see? I only propose this to you. Do you think out of camp that there's an opportunity where he actually breaks the Blue Jays big league roster?
I think there's an opportunity. I don't know if it happens. If you want to bring up that Fangraphs again, because I want to go through it a little bit. Regarding third base, I mean, it's interesting. Like Ernie Clement is probably going to start at third base on opening day, and you can see his projected WRC plus there on the right at 98. I mean, Fangraphs has the Jays like with a fantastic, unbelievably, optimistic projections there. And obviously, you're seeing a lot of 700s. If you have a 1 through 9 with basically everybody with a 700 OPS, you're going to win like 95 games. Now, will that happen? Maybe, like it's possible. But regarding, I think Ernie Clement starts at third. I don't think Aurelvis is going to break camp. There is a real chance. So I just think they're higher on Davis Schneider. They're higher on even like Will Wagner to a degree, because Will Wagner has a bit of a higher floor than Aurelvis Martinez does. Like, Will Wagner's going to be, he can probably be a 280, 290 average guy in a 750 OPS, whatever it ends up being. But I do think long-term, if he can even in the next couple months in AAA, if he can figure out his defense, he should, in theory, be like the starting third baseman for this team if he can figure out his defense. And his glove is really bad right now. It's like unplayable. If he can figure out to be a slightly below average third baseman defensively, you have the ceiling there of like a 35 home run. Third baseman who can play really well. And I wonder how much they factor his growth into the, whole Alex Bregman and not pursuing another third baseman thing, which I don't think Bregman was ever coming to Toronto really anyway, following the initial bidding. It seemed like he didn't want to. Yeah. So I don't think he does, but there is definitely a world where they decide to go with it. But they love Ernie Clement internally. Like, they absolutely love him. He hits for contact. He's a great base runner. He's really fast. So they're going to start the season. I'd put a lot of money on them starting the season with Ernie Clement as the starting third baseman, which I don't hate. And then depending how he does kind of transfer in, but you mentioned a good point. I mean, he can play in multiple positions. Aurelvis Martinez, not very good, but he can try, third
not
base.
Very good. You're right.
Yeah. A backup third baseman, maybe backup Jimenez if Bo Bichette is taking an off day and Andres is at short, or his off days there. Throw him at DH for most of his, reps there. And maybe they can do what they do with a bunch of, random players and just figure out if they can throw them in the outfield and see how that goes, even though they have a ton of outfielders as well. So I don't know. They have so many players that are average that can maybe have a good year. I mean, Davis Schneider, Joey Loperfido, obviously young guys, specifically Joey Loperfido. I don't know how the Davis Schneider experiment's going to go either. Like, there's a real world where he's just, I think he could just be gone from the Jays pitcher and then in the next month or two. I do think they start the season with him. I'm big on Aurelvis, though. I think he's going to be probably the guy when we look back at this in 8-9 months time, if they make any sort of run, even if they make the playoffs, was probably one of the biggest contributors to that as it pertains to players who didn't start on the team.
Yeah, and you make a good point about Will Wagner too. That guy, where's he going to get reps? He's kind of in the same-ish boat as Aurelvis Martinez in terms of position he can play. Like, obviously second base, DH, and then a little bit of third. I'm pretty sure he played a little bit of third when he was in AAA. So obviously there's that opportunity there for Will Wagner to potentially get in. So I think you're right. Like, I think if anyone's going to start out the year with that kind of role, it would be Will. And then we'll have to see kind of what happens. But then again, the season will unfold and opportunities will open up like hell. Maybe, some outfielders go down. There's Alan Roden. There's fuck it, Relvis Martinez, you're up and you're playing left field today, buddy. Like, figure it out, you know? So there could be some opportunities. And again, I do want to reiterate the point. It's now or never, you know, like we don't have time to wait, and they might be more willing to pull the trigger earlier in the year, like early May, you know what I mean? Like if early May, we need a jump shot. We need a jump shot to our lineup. And Relvis Martinez has hit 10 homers in April. Let's go. You know, like you're up. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what would have to happen for me. So any other type of like things that you're kind of excited about? I know tomorrow we have a pretty exciting game with Max Scherzer and Bowden Francis. Anything else that you're kind of, Nick, personally are looking forward to this spring training?
I think spring training wise, like the games don't actually matter. Like yesterday's game took like almost 4 hours, like 3.5 hours when it comes to the actual games. I think it's going to be a very critical season, and it's going to be, I think a lot of fans, and myself included a little bit, like I'm very excited for this season because it's baseball, right? It's obviously great. Yeah. I think the amount of, the actual implications that this season has on this franchise going forward, like you mentioned, Ross Atkins, his contract is expiring. Schneider's going to expire soon. Mark Shapiro, all these guys, they might be more willing to, like you mentioned, make a quick move, send somebody down, hurt some feelings, make a big trade, whatever, if they're in the race. And again, Keegan spoke about it in the video we did. Like if they're approaching the trade deadline and they're a game and a half, 2 games back of that third wildcard spot, or even in the third wildcard spot, what avenue do you go? Because I think if they fall down heavily, they might trade, Bo Bichette, for example. I don't think they're going to trade Vladdy. Like there's just a lot of avenues this can happen. And I want it to start because spring training is great. I want to continue to see the little things from that, specifically from the prospects. Max Scherzer tomorrow, see how he actually pitches. But as it pertains to the upcoming season, it's going to be, albeit a very scary one, I think. Yeah, one of the most important. The most important season since the last playoff series, or really it's going to be the most intense season in a very long time, because we could be talking in a year from today, Vladdy's gone, Bo's gone, and they have a complete rebuild or retool in some degree. And they just signed Anthony Santander for upwards of 6 years, probably 3 depending on the opt-outs. Like I don't know if this team is fully inclined to do a full rebuild, and it doesn't really happen in baseball that much anymore either, with how prospects tend to turn out with injuries and just the validity there. So it's the volatility. Sorry. So it's interesting. I'm excited for it, but it's going to be a scary season.
Yeah, bro, you just actually freaked me out. I just got to flash forward to literally next year, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
What am I watching? Let's hope that doesn't happen. But you're right. Every single thing matters. Every home run, every win, everything is amplified. And you're right. I would argue that this is the most important year probably since, people could argue this for me, probably since about 2016, right? Yeah. Like since the last time they had a run. Obviously that one went decent, didn't win the World Series, went to the ALCS, still pretty good. But this is equally as important, because if you don't do it, even more so, then you might lose your star player forever. Nick, thank you so much for coming in to Blue Jays today. Everybody, W's in the chat for Nick from Jays Digest. If you want to go check out his stuff, go check out Jays Digest on YouTube. Nick, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you.
Sure, it was a blast. We'll do it again soon, and hopefully the Jays can. Maybe we'll be here a year from now and we'll talk about a World Series win. Maybe that's what,
right.
We'll put it into the world. But thanks for having me.
We'll bring up the clips of us being all worried and be like, what a bunch of idiots. These guys do nothing.
Yeah, we'll run it back soon, and thanks for having me. It was great.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate you. Cheers. All right, guys, that was Nick from Jays Digest. Everybody, go check out his stuff like I mentioned. Before we move on, we got our mailbag coming up in just a little bit. So if you haven't already done that, submitted a question to the mailbag, click the link in the details section. You'll see a link for a Google form. It brings you up to a Google form, and you can submit your question there, put your name in, and I can bring it up right here on my end. But before we do, we've got to give a quick shout out. You know what it is. To the sponsor of the Blue Jays Today show. Hey guys, time for a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video. Hit your picks and knock it out of the park with Betway. Scan the QR code down below or click the link in the description to join the action. Available in Ontario only, must be 19 years older to participate. And guys, please bet responsibly. Now, back to the content. Shout out to Betway, everybody, for being absolutely awesome. You know, they've been the OG sponsors here for honestly about 2 years now. So they're going on their third Blue Jays season with us. So they're big supporters of the channel. We've got a line I had like I brought up with Nick, I had the line for today's game, and then it got canceled. I was like, all right, well, that's cool. But we got a line for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Just squeezed in the text there next to the Betway logo. Over under in RBIs. Over or under 92.5. The over is 1.74. The under is the underdog at 195. Where are you guys kind of at on this? I would assume in a contract year with, it all depends on who's batting in front of him too, right? Because if he moves up to that 2 spot, you could maybe make an argument for the under. But I think in a contract year, Buddy's going to go crazy. In the past years, he's had, where is it here? Standard average, blah, 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 blah. He had 103 last year, 94 the year prior, 97 the year before that, and then 111 the year before that. So he actually hasn't gone under ever since COVID. So I guess with that being said, I got to take the over, right? Contract year, this guy's supposed to be better. I'm probably going to be taking the over there. So you guys, if you want to bet on that, go check out Betway. Link is in the details. Everyone's saying over. Oh, big time overs. Let's go. All right, let's get to the mailbag. Let's go. And I'm hoping, because we got a new sponsor, shout out to Tim Hortons, I'm hoping that we can get a sponsor for this segment too, which is the mailbag. I've got it right here. You guys know what it is. Blue Jays Today mailbag. This one comes in from Lindsay B. Shout out Lindsay B, who was there on the live stream the other day saying, hi, boys. Do you think Orelvis's bomb on Sunday, I think she meant Saturday, but he also hit a double on Sunday too, so shout out to Lindsay, gives him a chance to get onto the big league roster. Now, I literally just brought this up with Nick, so a little bit of a transition here. Or is everyone still nervous because of his suspension last season? Could be another big bat. Thanks for all you do. Hashtag road to 30K. That's right. Actually, this is a quick shout out, everybody. If you're watching and enjoying the content, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Blue Jays Today. We're so close to 30,000 subscribers. It's crazy. It'd be awesome to get there. Now, like I brought up with Nick, I think it's definitely brings attention to him. Like, this guy's continuously hitting in spring training year after year after year. So I think it absolutely helps, but not to begin the year, not to break camp, because you still got Will Wagner there. I think it helps him, like I said, come May, if they really need him, if he's still popping off, like, bring him up. I'm not, to answer this part, or is everyone still nervous about the suspension last season? I'm not nervous at all. I think he was highly touted for a reason. I don't really think, excuse me, I just burped. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how much his PED affected him. Like, at all, because again, it was, if we take his word for it and it's just to help us get his girlfriend pregnant, then like, I don't know how, like, is it a mixture, like, is it just a chemical within this like drug? I don't know, so I don't really know how much it affects him. I'm not worried about it at all. So, and yes, it could be another big bat, so absolutely that could be the case right there. Segmena saying this team will be challenged with a big lame duck contracts. I'm not too sure what you mean by that. We have another question in here right now. I'm just trying to pull it up right now. It takes a little bit longer with the StreamYards. This one comes in from Treeper FN. Shout out to Treeper FN. Do you guys think the Vlad could still be a J? In my eyes, this is just a Judge situation all over again. And people bring that up. Even Keegan Matheson has been bringing this up. Where, yeah, like, he turned down, like, Judge turned down a massive contract to begin the year, and everyone was kind of like, oh my God, he's going to go to San Fran, he's going to go XYZ, and then he didn't, and then he went back to New York on a huge deal. So, and again, he's always said too before, like, I always wanted to be a New York Yankee. That never changed, but he also was open to talking to 30 teams. Same kind of things happening with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So I'm kind of on the same boat as you, my friend. Like, I'm kind of on the same boat as you, Treeper FN. That it could happen. Now, I know Peyton Patton in here saying Vlad ship has sailed. It hasn't. Maybe that's your opinion, but it truly hasn't. He's still on the team, and he's still open to 30 teams. He didn't say 29 teams, excluding the Jays. He said 30, and he obviously has a more of a bias towards being here as Toronto Blue Jay for the rest of his career. So I would say no. I think we still got a chance. Guys, I think that is going to be it for this podcast. We got to wait for a few more questions. So if you guys haven't already, make sure to submit your questions. Nick will be back for the Friday Blue Jays Today show. So make sure you get your questions in for then about spring training. We've talked a lot about Vladdy, but maybe if you want to talk about something else, we can. Vladdy can kind of get this off a little bit. Blue Jays today. We're almost at 30,000 subscribers. Hashtag road to 30K. And also hashtag last dance. Also, we're going to be live tomorrow for Max Scherzer and Bowden Francis. You're going to have Max Scherzer, then Bowden Francis, piggybacking off each other. So that's going to be super awesome. I'll be live unless it gets rained out, and we won't be live. But guys, thank you so much for watching. And as always, guys, go Jays, go!